Objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be clear right away. We got great federal workers. They care, they're patriotic, they work hard. But we got a few that are bad apples. And we've got to give the tools necessary to the leadership within the administration to do what is right, and if necessary, allow them latitude to let those people go. We voted on a similar bill years ago before I got into Congress. We gave this right and authority. We gave it to the IRS, and guess what? The IRS has the best tax compliance in all federal government. Who would have thought? I was pleased to see that Congressman Steny Hoyer voted for that piece of legislation, that Congressman Elijah Cummings voted for that piece of legislation. We want to take that same power, that same right that we gave the IRS years ago, because it worked. It worked. And we want to give that to the other departments and agencies. Now, there's a lot of exceptions. There's a lot of ways to get out of this, but the basic principle is true. A, federal workers do a better job of paying their taxes than the general public, and we should pat them on the back and we should recognize them for that. But number two, when you do have a few bad apples, you've got to allow leadership the ability to let those people go if they continue to thumb their nose at the system and the taxpayers. We just heard testimony from the DEA. I can't fire anybody, even though they were engaged in some very nefarious activities. We've heard the administrator of the EPA say, I can't let anybody go, even though the person was watching 4 hours of porn a day. 4 hours a day, they couldn't fire him. Let's give them some latitude, because we have a test case. It's worked. We want tax compliance. The President's fiscal year 2016 budget asks American taxpayers to spend $275 billion to pay federal workers an average salary of more than $78,000. Yet the IRS reports that more than 100,000 federal civilian employees owed more than $1 billion in unpaid federal income taxes in 2014. More than $1 billion. Now, there are lots of reasons why people can't do that. There are people that need to have their wages garnished, and they are. There are people that are disputing what the IRS said. And again, this bill doesn't affect those people. The adjudication process continues on. This bill doesn't affect those people. But as a last resort, we need a tool that the IRS has for its employees. We need that tool for the other departments and agencies. Because like it or not, the law requires that we pay taxes. 5 years ago, President Obama directed his administration to crack down on tax cheats. It was specifically targeting and discussing contractors, but I would argue that the same principle for contractors should be in place for federal employees. How can you look the contractors and the employees in the eyes and say, well, we got two totally different standards of principles? The principle's the same. Pay your taxes. There's not a problem. You're in trouble. You're trying to get out of it. Not a problem. We'll work with you. But for those of you that are just screwing over the American taxpayer, bye-bye. You can't even apply. The president said, quote, all across this country, there are people who meet their obligations each and every day. You do your jobs, you support your families, you pay the taxes you owe because it's a fundamental responsibility of citizenship. End quote. I totally and wholeheartedly agree. The Federal Employee Tax Accountability Act makes individuals with serious delinquent tax debt ineligible for federal employment. It is defined as an outstanding federal tax debt that has been assessed and may be collected by levy or court proceeding. The legislation does not affect employees who are working to settle their tax disputes or resolving liabilities. I want to also indicate and remind everybody that the committee and me as the prime sponsor accepted 100%. Every Democrat amendment that was offered, we accepted. Several other safeguards are carved out in the bill, including provisions offered by the minority in the previous Congresses. Individuals are provided full due process rights and have an additional 180 days to demonstrate their debt meets one of the exemptions in the bill. That was, I believe, offered by Congressman Lynch. We accepted it, and we thought we would get broader support because of it, and we would hope we would today. The bill also provides a financial hardship exemption for individuals if the individual's service is in the best interest of the United States. The person who's leading that Department of Agency still has discretion. If they say it's in the best interest, in my judgment, in the United States to continue to have this person serve, they're allowed to continue to serve. The bill demonstrates a simple principle. Individual collection of federal salary funded by taxpayers have to follow the rules and pay the taxes. Those charged with the stewardship of our federal resources and programs should not be delinquent in their taxes. As all Americans file their taxes today, so should federal employees. And most of them do. Most of them do. In fact, at better rates than civilians do. Last month, the testimony before the committee, the GAO warned Congress of tens of thousands of federal employees eligible for security clearances, but still had unpaid tax debts. I would argue that that is a potential security risk. It shows a vulnerability. During the hearing, members discussed the IRS's employees' high rate of tax compliance. From 2009 to 2013, IRS employees had a 0.8% delinquency rate compared to 3.3% for civilian workers through the government. The IRS Reform Act of 1998, which again, Mr. Hoyer, Mr. Cummings, and a host of other people voted in favor of, required the removal of IRS employees who are found to have willingly failed to file their tax returns and who willfully understated their federal tax liability. The House passed the conference report of this bill by a vote of 402 to 8. Overwhelming. And I've never heard another member complain that the IRS has this provision in place. Let's even the playing field. Let's give that same tool to the rest of the federal government. Don't give it just to the IRS. Give it to the Department of Interior. Give it to the Department of Defense. Give it to the other departments and agencies because the financial results of that work. This bill makes federal workers subject to the same standard as IRS employees. Not all federal workers are tax cheats. This is not about politics. I appreciate the good work that's gone on in this bill. Unfortunately, despite past efforts, we haven't been able to get this bill over the finish line. I hope the House will again support the bill as it did in 2012 and that the Senate will act on this bill.